Hello everyone, and welcome to Tales from the Dark. I'm here to help you today. I know you use this video to fall asleep. So before that, like this video and subscribe to the channel. Also, where are you from and what time are you watching? Now, get comfortable and relax. This horror tale is called A House in the Fog. If I'd known the road was going to vanish, I would have never turned off the highway. There was no real reason for me to take the back roads that night. My GPS rerouted me, claiming there was construction on the interstate. But I've since come to believe something else, something not entirely technological, intervened. I remember the cold sweat that had started to bead on the back of my neck just minutes after the turn. I'd been driving for hours already. The sky was the color of iron and bruised clouds, the kind that feel too low, too heavy. A mist had started rising off the blacktop, swirling like it had a mind of its own. The clock on the dashboard blinked 6:47 p.m. Dusk, though the sun had already surrendered behind that veil of fog. I was alone, and I knew it, even now, months later. If you can call what I've endured months, I remember everything about that road. The wet, dead leaves clinging to the windshield wipers, the way the trees pressed in, tall and black, like they were arching inward to listen, and the sound, or lack of it. No birds, no bugs, just the low rumble of tires over gravel. Then the headlights caught something. Movement, a figure at the edge of the road, maybe 20 feet ahead. I slammed the brakes, heart leaping into my throat. It was a woman, standing perfectly still. Pale dress, bare feet, her face obscured by her hair, which hung in heavy, wet strands. My hands tightened on the wheel. I blinked. She was gone, just vanished, like fog being inhaled into the trees. I don't remember the next few seconds clearly. I think I sat there in the middle of the road, staring at the spot she'd stood, trying to convince myself I hadn't just hallucinated. The GPS chirped again. Turn right in 200 feet. But there was no road, only a break in the trees, barely wide enough for a car. No sign, no pavement, just a muddy, narrow path choked with mist. And yet, I turned. The second my tires left the road, the fog swallowed me. Not just around me, inside the car. My breath fogged the windows faster than I could wipe it. The air grew cold, moist, and sharp. I turned off the radio. It had started to crackle, picking up static, but also something underneath. Faint whispers. I told myself it was a bleed-through from another channel, something easily explainable. But even then, part of me knew that wasn't true. That wasn't interference. That was language. The path narrowed even further. Branches scratched against the sides of the car like claws. A thought wormed its way into my mind, unwelcome and stupid. What if I get stuck out here? I wasn't supposed to be here. This wasn't a road. This was a mistake. Just as I reached for the gear shift to reverse, my headlights hit something. A house. At the very end of the path, tucked between two gnarled trees, was a two-story wooden house, weathered gray, with a sagging roof and a porch that looked ready to collapse under the weight of its own shadow. But the lights were on. Two windows glowed with a faint yellow hue, like the last embers of a fire. And in the window closest to the door, a silhouette. Someone was standing there, watching me. I should have driven away. I know that now. I should have backed out and kept driving until I hit the highway, or a town, or even a ditch. Anything but this. But I was cold, and scared, and, most dangerously, curious. I stepped out of the car. The air was heavy, almost syrupy. Each breath was damp and sour, like mildew and copper. The trees were utterly still. Not a single branch moved. I walked to the porch. Every board groaned beneath me. The door was slightly ajar, and without thinking, I knocked. One slow knock, then silence, then creak. The door opened by itself, and there she was, the woman I had seen on the road. Only now, she wasn't wet or barefoot. She was wearing a gray sweater. Her face was clean, though her eyes, something about her eyes felt wrong. Too dark, too still. She smiled. "Come in," she said. "You look like you've been driving forever." The floor creaked beneath my boots as I stepped inside. The door shut behind me with a soft click. I turned instinctively, expecting to see the woman there behind it, but the hallway was empty. The warmth hit me first. Not just heat, but a suffocating closeness, like the air had been sitting for too long, steeped in firelight and something older. The interior didn't match the outside. From the path, the house had looked half abandoned, sagging and moldy, but inside it was neat. Old, yes, but clean. A thick Persian rug stretched across the hallway. Walls of faded floral wallpaper peeled just slightly at the corners. A wooden coat rack leaned slightly by the door, holding 2 old coats and an umbrella. At the end of the hallway was a staircase, winding up into darkness, and to my left, soft candlelight spilling from a sitting room. I followed it. She was there, seated in an armchair by the fire, a steaming cup of something in her hands. "Would you like some tea?" she asked. There was no kettle nearby, no kitchen sounds, just that quiet voice and her steady gaze. Yeah," I said, more out of instinct than desire. She nodded once, stood, and disappeared around the corner without a sound. I stood there for a few seconds, staring at the fire, and that's when I noticed the photographs. There were dozens of them, hanging on the wall beside the fireplace. Old black and white portraits, yellowing with age. The kind you'd find in a dusty attic, people dressed stiffly, none smiling, all with that uncanny stillness you only get from long exposures and long-forgotten lives. Except one thing caught my eye. Every single photograph featured the same woman, sometimes young, sometimes old, sometimes standing at the edge of a group, other times alone. But it was her. Always her. She returned holding a mug. I turned quickly to face her. "This is your family?" I asked, nodding toward the wall. She looked at the photos, then smiled softly. "Some of them." "Is that you? In all of them?" She didn't blink. "Yes." No embarrassment. No attempt to laugh it off. Just confirmation. "That would mean you're, 100 years old?" She handed me the mug. Her fingers were warm. Too warm. "I've been here a long time," she said. "Longer than most." She showed me to a room upstairs, at the far end of the hall. The moment the door opened, I was hit by the scent of lavender, dust, and something faintly sweet, like dried flowers and candle wax. The room was simple. A small bed with a quilted blanket, a dresser, a mirror, and a single window looking out into nothing but trees and fog. "There's no cell reception out here," she said as she turned down the blanket. "No television either. The storm tends to knock out the lines, but it'll pass." She walked toward the door, then paused. "Oh, and if you hear scratching in the walls, don't worry. The house shifts sometimes. Old bones. You understand." Then she was gone. I stood there for a long time, holding the mug. The tea was cold now. I hadn't even seen her pour it. I woke up to complete darkness. Not the kind that feels like night, but the kind that feels like burial. Thick, silent, pressing against your skin. I didn't remember falling asleep. My eyes adjusted slowly. The window was fogged, but faint moonlight filtered through, just enough to outline the dresser and the mirror. That's when I heard it. Scratching. Faint. Rhythmic. At first, I thought it was in the walls, just like she'd said. But as I held my breath and listened, I realized it was coming from the mirror. I sat up slowly, staring at it. SCRRCH, SCRRCH, SCRRCH. Then silence. I stood, moved toward it. The glass was cloudy. My reflection was barely visible. And then it moved. Just slightly. Not in sync with me. I jerked backward, and the scratching started again. But now it was coming from under the bed. The silence was so complete it felt unnatural, like the house itself was holding its breath. I stood frozen in place, staring at the bed. The sound I'd heard wasn't imagined. It was deliberate, measured, close. I crouched. The quilt's edge hung just low enough to hide the shadow beneath, and my gut twisted as I reached out and lifted it. Nothing. Only darkness and wooden floorboards. But the scratching started again. Inside my head this time. Not heard, but felt. I blinked hard. My pulse thundered. And then the floor creaked behind me. I shot up, spinning toward the door. Nothing there. Just the silent hallway beyond the cracked doorframe, and the faint sound of something shifting downstairs. I didn't sleep the rest of the night. Morning came with a light that didn't feel natural, more like it had been placed there. The fog outside hadn't lifted. The trees beyond the window were barely visible, and the world felt muffled, like I was wrapped in cotton. I decided to investigate the mirror. During the day, its surface was easier to look at, but something was off, almost imperceptible. Its reflection wasn't quite right. Angles were warped. Light bent oddly near the corners, and in the top right corner, just beneath the frame, I saw it. A carving. Faint, worn by time. A triangle with a vertical slit through the center. I reached out and touched it. The surface rippled beneath my fingers, like water. A low sound groaned behind the glass. Then a shape, barely visible, appeared behind my reflection. It wasn't the woman. It was me, standing still, not moving when I moved, just staring, eyes wide, mouth open. I stumbled back, and the mirror returned to normal. Morning came with a light that didn't feel natural, more like it had been placed there. The fog outside hadn't lifted. The trees beyond the window were barely visible, and the world felt muffled, like I was wrapped in cotton. I decided to investigate the mirror. During the day, its surface was easier to look at, but something was off, almost imperceptible. Its reflection wasn't quite right. Angles were warped. Light bent oddly near the corners, and in the top right corner, just beneath the frame, I saw it. A carving. Faint, worn by time. A triangle with a vertical slit through the center. I reached out and touched it. The surface rippled beneath my fingers, like water. A low sound groaned behind the glass. Then a shape, barely visible, appeared behind my reflection. It wasn't the woman. It was me, standing still, not moving when I moved, just staring, eyes wide, mouth open. I stumbled back, and the mirror returned to normal. Later that day, I wandered the house. The woman was nowhere to be found. No sound from downstairs. No clinking cups, no footsteps. Just stillness. I opened doors carefully, calling out, "Hello? Ma'am." Silence answered. In the main hallway, I noticed a door at the base of the stairs. One I swore hadn't been there the night before. It was narrow, old, rusted around the hinges. I tried the knob. Locked. I leaned close, pressing an ear to the wood. I expected silence, or maybe the scratching. Instead, I heard breathing. My own, from the other side. That night, I heard her voice. It came from the fireplace, not spoken aloud, but carried on the breath of the flames. Soft, crooning, like a lullaby. "Stay warm, you'll need it." I pressed closer, unsure whether it was a trick of the wind, but then the fire flared, blue and bright, and I saw shapes dancing in the flames. Not smoke, not logs, figures. One had her face, but the others, They looked like travelers, people like me, some young, some older, all of them with the same expression, trapped. And just before the fire dimmed again, one of them turned to face me and mouthed, "Run." I returned to the sitting room the next morning, drawn there by something I couldn't name. The photographs on the wall were just as I remembered, old, yellowed, and all starring the same woman in different times and places. But one of them had changed. It now included a man. His back was to the camera, standing a few feet behind her in a shadowed hallway. He was tall, dressed in modern clothes, unmistakably out of place among the stiff-collared people in the other photos. I leaned closer. My blood went cold. It was me. I was in the photo. I stared at it for a long time, trying to tell myself I was wrong, that the resemblance was just a trick. But I knew. It was the same coat I was wearing now, the same jeans, even the scuff on my right boot. And worse, he wasn't there the day before. The photo had updated itself. I went to the kitchen. It was the only room I hadn't explored, mostly because the hallway leading to it always felt longer than it should have been. It had the smell of root vegetables, dried meat, and rusted water. The woman wasn't there, but something was cooking on the stove, a thick broth gently bubbling. No steam rose from it. I looked around. Everything looked perfectly normal. Dated, yes. Pots made of cast iron, a butter churn in the corner, bundles of herbs hanging from the ceiling. But one thing caught my eye. A second door, tucked behind a curtain of dried sage, barely wide enough for a person to squeeze through. I hadn't seen it before. There were too many doors in this house. I pushed it open and found myself in a pitch-black hallway. Dirt beneath my feet, wooden beams overhead, no windows, no light. The hallway was impossibly long, stretching into a darkness that seemed to bend inward. I took one step. The door slammed shut behind me. I didn't panic, not immediately. The air smelled like wet stone and iron. There was a strange stillness to it, as if sound refused to carry. I pulled out my phone. Still no signal, but the flashlight worked. The beam cut through the dark, just enough to show more dirt, more beams, and, after 20 feet or so, an old wooden table. I stepped forward. The table held books, hundreds of them, stacked high. Most of them were coated in dust, bound in old leather, but all had names etched into the spines in handwritten script. Every one of them was labeled with a first and last name, all different, none familiar, until one was. I froze, because I saw my name, my full name, on a black leather volume, slightly newer than the others. My hands trembled as I reached for it. When I opened it, I expected pages. What I found were photographs, hundreds of them, all of me, different angles, sleeping, reading, standing in the hall, staring at a mirror. But none of these were moments I remembered. They weren't from this trip. They were from years ago, from childhood, from a night I spent in motel off Route 15, from a morning I had breakfast alone in a cafe in Idaho. She'd been watching me, for years. I dropped the book. It didn't make a sound when it hit the dirt floor, just a soft thud, like falling onto flesh. I staggered back from the table, heart pounding in my ears. I wanted to run, to scream, to wake up and realize this was all some sick dream, but I couldn't move. My name echoed in my head. The photos inside that book weren't taken from a distance. They weren't the grainy, zoomed-in shots of a stalker hiding in a crowd. They were close. Some looked like they'd been taken from inside my home. I reached for my phone again. Still no service. Battery at 29%. I turned to leave. The hallway was gone. Behind me now was a solid wall of stone. I don't remember how long I stood there. Minutes. Hours. Time felt loose, like wet cloth slipping through my fingers. Eventually I moved. There was only one direction left, Forward, deeper into the underground. The tunnel twisted and narrowed. My shoulders brushed against damp earth. The floor sloped downward, and the air grew colder with every step. At the end was a wooden door. No knob, just a simple brass plate etched with the triangle and slit symbol I'd seen in the mirror. I pushed it open. The room beyond was wrong. It had no ceiling, just open sky, or what looked like sky. Churning clouds that swirled above like paint in water. The walls were made of black stone, covered in carvings I couldn't read. They moved when I looked at them, rearranged themselves. In the center of the room was a chair, and in that chair was me, but not. Same clothes, same face, but the skin was cracked like dry clay. The eyes were pure white. He stared straight ahead, unmoving. I stepped closer. My throat tightened. That thing, it turned its head slowly to look at me. Then it smiled and whispered, "She's been wearing you longer than you remember." I ran. I don't know how I escaped that room. The hallway reappeared, or maybe a new one formed. The house wasn't a structure anymore. It was a thing, shifting around me, breathing. I slammed a door behind me and found myself back in the guest room. The mirror was fogged, the window too, but the bed was different. The sheets were mussed. The pillow still held the shape of a head, and the mug of tea she'd given me that first night was full again, still warm, and the smell wasn't lavender anymore. It was meat. I turned and threw up in the corner. Then I noticed the dresser drawer was open. Inside, tucked beneath folded linens, was a photograph. It showed me, in this very room, asleep, and standing in the corner, just barely visible in the shadow, was her. But she wasn't looking at me. She was looking at the mirror, and she was smiling. I didn't sleep. I couldn't. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw him. That thing in the chair, my cracked reflection. She'd been wearing me. What did that mean? I sat on the floor for what felt like hours, staring at the walls. They pulsed faintly, breathing. I felt it in my skin. My heartbeat was no longer just mine. I decided to search the room again. Every corner, every board, every shadow. It was under the bed I found it. A loose panel, not the size of a drawer or safe. This wasn't made for storing things. It was an opening, a narrow, black crawl space with wet soil and fingerwood roots hanging like veins from the ceiling. I almost didn't go in, but I had to know. The crawl space twisted downward, deeper than it should have been able to go beneath any house. I crawled on elbows, belly scraping damp stone, air thick with rot and iron. My phone's flashlight cut only a few feet ahead, and even that flickered now, 18% battery. Eventually, the tunnel widened into a chamber, and what I saw there, God, the walls were covered in flesh. Human, animal, I couldn't tell. Some sections had mouths, dozens of them, gaping, wheezing, moving slightly as if whispering in dreams. Some wept blood. In the center of the room, growing from a thick mass of bone and root, was a throne, woven of ribs, adorned with teeth. She was seated there, or something shaped like her. Not the sweet old woman, but the thing behind her smile. It wore her skin like a coat, loose, ill-fitting now. Her head tilted at an unnatural angle. Her eyes were open and not seeing, milky and dry. But the voice was still hers. "You're almost ready," she said. I tried to speak. Nothing came out. She smiled wider. "This house doesn't just keep the lost. It uses them." Then, from behind me, I heard movement. Not one set of hands. Not two. Dozens. I turned. Figures were crawling from the walls. Some were deformed. Others wore the same face as the people in the books, the names in the library. Travelers, all of them. Old and new. Bound. Their eyes were blank, but they moved like they knew exactly where they were going. Toward me. Don't struggle, the voice whispered from behind. The house is tired of chewing. It wants to swallow. I backed away. My flashlight died. Then I saw something shine through the darkness. A mirror, standing in the middle of the feeding room, framed in bone, reflecting light that wasn't there. I ran. I didn't think. I dove into it, and as I passed through, I heard the voice say, "We all return to glass in the end." Falling through glass doesn't feel like falling. It's more like being pulled inside out. All your thoughts, your weight, your sense of you becomes distorted, twisted through a membrane you weren't meant to pass. When I hit the floor, I didn't feel pain. I felt echoes. They rushed through me like voices in water, like the memory of thousands of people trying to scream with no mouths. I was in the house again, but wrong. Everything was mirrored. The rooms reversed. The hallway curved in the opposite direction. The staircase coiled the other way. Even the air smelled inverted, like burning dust soaked in rainwater. The house had duplicated itself. Or maybe this was the real one, and the other was the mask. I followed the hall. Something deep inside told me where to go. Not logic, instinct. I was being pulled, like thread through a needle. At the end of the hallway was a wooden door, much older than the others, splintered at the edges, bound in rusted iron. On the other side, a room, empty, except for a single chair, facing a wall of mirrors. Not one, dozens. All of them stacked and layered and cracked, but all showing one thing. Me, not my reflection, not copies. Me, sitting in other places. One was asleep in the guest room. One eating soup I'd never eaten. One in the feeding chamber, eyes blank and obedient. And in every mirror, the house looked different. Sometimes nicer, sometimes in ruins, sometimes alive. Then I realized the truth. The house exists everywhere. It exists for each of us. It's not a place. It's a pattern. And once you fall into it, it builds itself around you. She appeared behind me in the mirror. Not old now. Not young either. Just blank. Like she'd stripped off her skin and become a thing of pure presence. "You've seen too much," she said. "Now you must choose." Her voice wasn't threatening. It was tired. I turned to face her. She looked at me with something like pity. "You were one of us once. Before you remembered." My mouth went dry. "What do you mean?" "You returned to the house. You always do." She stepped forward, hand outstretched. "You were never running from it. You were coming back." And then I remembered. The dreams as a child. The feeling of being watched. The gaps in memory. I had been here before. She brought me to the library again. But this time, the books were open. Pages fluttered as if caught in a wind that didn't blow. My book was thicker now, filled with new photos. One for every step I'd taken since entering the house. The last page was blank. Waiting. "You can stay," she said. "Help guide the next. Keep the pattern. Be part of something eternal." I looked around. The mouths on the walls were whispering, but they weren't screaming. They were singing. And for a moment I understood it. Peace, purpose, belonging. And then I tore the page out. The room shook. The walls cracked. The mirrors shattered. And the house began to scream. I ran. Through collapsing halls. Through burning rooms. Through mirrors that melted like wax. And then I was outside. Back on the path. My car was still there. Hood up. Engine dead. The fog was gone. The sky was pale. Early morning. I stumbled into the driver's seat and didn't stop shaking until the sun rose high enough to burn the last of the chill from my skin. I never went back, but I still see her sometimes. In windows, in the reflection on the back of my phone, in dreams I don't remember having. And every once in a while, I wake up with dirt on my floorboards and a book under my bed, waiting. If you've read this far, I'm sorry. It means the house is watching you now. You've begun to learn the shape of the thing behind the door. And that means you're on the path. Just don't look too long in the mirror. And if a woman in gray offers you tea, run.